I loved Martha Stewart so much, but I also loved fashion so much and everything that my mom was. And so I figured I'd just go to college and figure it out, which was having my own company, which was having a company that incorporated all of the things that I love in life. Everything that Preserve is everything that I am in my personal life. And so it's actually the stuff that I'm good at. It's the stuff that I spend most of my time doing, the stuff that I've really honed and practiced.
Hi, besties. We have so much to cover today about Blake Lively. Welcome back to my channel. It's Katie Joy. I have so much to say. Yesterday, we talked about narcissists and what narcissists do in the courtroom. I gave you a list of all of the ways that they drive up costs, make filings, project and deflect, and put their bad behavior onto the other person to confuse the judge. So now you might understand why all of these motions are being filed. But something I didn't get to yesterday had to do with some news that came and dropped by the Daily Mail about Preserve LLC, which was Blake's run at trying to be a lifestyle blogger. She was trying to be like Gwyneth Paltrow or Martha Stewart. She had this vision that, she was going to retire and then become like Martha and Gwyneth so that she wouldn't have to rely on acting. And she even sat down and told this to Forbes. She was featured as 30 under 30 with Forbes, and she was bragging about what an entrepreneur she is, which is interesting because now that we know what Daily Mail has exposed about the conditions of these employees and her limited involvement in it, it's messy. Check this out.
There's not one element of the site that I don't touch. So there are the fun parts, like every photo shoot, style the clothing, or, our recent gift guide. I did all of the prop styling, written site copy for the product, like it is this many inches tall. Just things that I should not be doing. Raising money through investors is something I've done all on my own. There's not one thing that I don't touch, but I also love that. You have an acting career and you think of it as, well, this is my craft and this is an art, but really this day and age, it's each person is their own brand. And so I have they call in this world the unfair advantage of having what is an existing brand. So it's as if a company who's been successful goes and starts a different company in a different field. So it is very unfair that I can raise money easier through that. But it's also, I've learned so much about raising the right money. You want to go to investors who are invested. So their physical investment is worth so much more than their fiscal investment. Challenging in it, and it beats you down, but you just have to love it so much in order to keep going each day.
So if you listen to her there, you would assume that she was involved in all aspects of this company, from formation of it, from development, from even uploading onto the website, which wasn't even that great, to the copy on the website, to what products they would choose, to the photo shoots. You would assume that she was doing this all on its own. And it's pretty wild when I learned about the number of employees that were involved in this quote unquote company, because the website itself was underwhelming and it had terrible reviews based on the weird products that she would choose, the weird clothing and dolls that she promoted, the weird copy and articles they wrote, the strange recipes that they shared. It was very out of touch in a way that was more out of touch than Gwyneth Paltrow. It wasn't very relatable. And if you listen to her, she was involved in all of that. Okay. Every aspect of it. It was all her. But while this got launched, she was working on filming of Age of Adeline. She was pregnant. She gave birth to her first child. And she was in 2 movies and had a kid and launched a business all at the same time, meaning it's highly likely she had nothing to do with the business. And it's very common in this industry that a celebrity just slaps their name on something. They hire a bunch of people to do it, and then they use their name to sell the product, which is basically how Ryan Reynolds has built his fake empire that isn't as big as you would think it is. So according to the Daily Mail, the staff was basically the ones that did everything, but it wasn't even her staff. It was her brother, Eric, who lived in the New York area at the time. And the office was based out of his apartment, a studio apartment, and it was apparently unprofessional and toxic. Now, the Daily Mail spoke to 6 former employees of this company, and it was run out of a Manhattan studio apartment, which was owned by her brother. Eric. He drank alcohol, smoked pot allegedly, and frequently left staff out in the cold when he overslept. One staffer told them the entire company was an absolute disaster. The workplace allegations that Blake is making now against Baldoni are deeply ironic, given that it was one of the most insane, toxic, emotionally draining, and disorganized environments you could imagine. That sounds like a lot like what it sounds like to be on a movie set with her. And the people I talked to from the world of film that said working with her is chaotic. The impression Blake left on me after I worked at Preserve is that she doesn't care. It was really a toxic work environment. The staff apparently spoke anonymously. They feared backlash from Lively for calling out the alleged shambolic and inappropriate work environment that she presided over. Several of them were apparently asked to sign non disclosure agreements about the implosion of the company. And some were also said to have received settlements of up to $300,000 after threatening legal action over their treatment. And when this blew up, Blake didn't really share what happened or why. She just said that it didn't work. She launched it too early. She wasn't ready. And at one point in an interview in the fall, right before it blew up, she said that she was being pit against other women, and that's why her company wasn't doing as well as it should be, using sexism, but we'll get there. So, according to the former employees, Leslie Sloan shut it down. They buried every single thing about that company. And at first, she brought in someone with a background to do this. And the guy that was doing this was Krishan Menon. He had a marketing company out of LA. And then they moved to New York. And it went down fast when her brother got involved in it. So, according to this, he hired 8 20-somethings from the world of digital marketing and design, and for the next year had a reign of chaos. He was completely unqualified to run a company. There were a lot of ways in which the employment was unprofessional. For many weeks or months, there were no desks. We had to sit on the floor. The irony of being in a lifestyle site that was selling these really expensive wares was not lost on anyone. It was a big studio. There wasn't a delineation between living quarters and working quarters. The bed was part of the same room. There was a whiteboard, but it wasn't really furnished. I felt like he was being an actor, acting the part of creative director for a company. That sounds familiar. I think Blake acts her way through everything. One day, suddenly out of nowhere, he said, "You need to put together a strategy and present it tomorrow." You show up for work the next day and he's still asleep. They said that they were frequently left outside in the cold. On weekday mornings, people would be outside in the cold and he wouldn't let them in because he was still lying in bed smoking a bowl. He was also taking pills. He would openly smoke. He drank too. We get to the office and it would smell like weed. It was clear that he partied the night before. But at the same time, he was very charismatic and convincing, and you'd want to be around him. You just didn't know what you were in for when you were with him. We were subject to his moods and whims, and those were very dysregulated. There was anger, and you had to walk on eggshells. There was no one with a sane mind watching over us. Eric would tell us to do random things. We'd have random meetings that went nowhere. They were apparently driven to her mansion in Westchester County in New York. And they said, staff said Blake came out of her house hours late looking like an absolute mess. The whole idea was to show that she was styling the shoots and all she was doing was adding accessories like the bracelets for the pictures. That was her only input. Other employees also told me about a preserve fashion shoot run by Eric in New York, says days later, and she had no part in it. He had somehow finagled students from a film school to assist in the shoot as free interns, and it was a disaster. The staff said the environment was frantic. Late at night in our 5th floor walk up, they were hiking gear up 5 flights of stairs in a panicked rush. Some people were working every single day for 20 hours, a crazy amount, not because there was work to be done, but because it was so dysfunctional and Eric captured people into his sphere, according to the staffer. Apparently, They made complaints to the New York City Department of Buildings in January of 2015. And when they visited, they were unable to gain entry. The complaints accused Preserve of illegal commercial manufacturing use in a residential zone. Illegal commercial manufacturing use in a residential zone. Oh, so they didn't have the right permits. Interesting. With an anonymous filer writing, I would like to report someone who is using their apartment as an online business and constantly has 10 to 20 people in the apartment at a time. There was a complaint by a former NFL player named Sean Avery, but he apparently said that it was fine, no big deal. And then here comes the wild part. He was apparently married at the time, and he still is, although we don't know where this woman is. She did not respond to a request for comment, but apparently he got into a sexual relationship with someone that was an employee. So, also, apparently, paychecks were haphazard. Two staff members were said to be unable to afford their subway fares when Preserve failed to pay them on time. And then, but by the spring of 2015, she was traveling back to New York City, including appearing on the Times Square set of Good Morning America to promote her film, The Age of Adeline. And at their wits' end, with the chaotic and toxic workplace, the senior staff, this doesn't sound very senior, by the way, they apparently confronted her about what was going on. Blake immediately shut it down and said she wouldn't be entertaining anything about her brother. The entire meeting was about Eric, and Blake was just didn't want to hear anything about it, so it went nowhere. And when they went to have the meeting, Blake didn't care about any of it and didn't want to hear about any of it, which is why some employees ended up going through with legal action. When they did threaten to sue, although none of them actually went to court, one employee received a settlement of up to $300,000 and moved out of state. Sources close to the company said the multiple legal actions were launched after the company started firing staff. Oh, of course. Of course. They only sued after people were fired. That's their side of the story. They all were asked to sign non disclosures, and it was reportedly shut down. And in an interview with Time in 2015, she blamed her brand's lackluster launch on sexism and the media. Does this sound familiar? They pit women against each other. You don't see male entrepreneurs pitted against each other, destroyed, picked apart, and every word they say served up to judge. I think everyone gets picked apart. We had a Vogue cover set up. So I couldn't call Anna Wintour and say I need 6 more months. Oh, so she was using the cover to promote her new business. And so she started a business prematurely. She added that her staff were a team of amazing people coming to work and bleeding, sweating, and crying every day and loving it. Some of the ex-employees told the Daily Mail they decided to speak out now after seeing Blake accuse Baldoni of sexual harassment and unprofessional environment on the set. They said it's so ironic that she filed a workplace lawsuit when her workplace had 3 legal claims. 3 out of roughly 8 employees made legal claims. She didn't care to understand how the mismanagement of her brother could be affecting us. She's entitled and extremely out of touch and really only cares about herself. She was always very nice to me, said one, but you would think that for somebody so concerned with their image and narrative, there would be more care taken to make sure things were more professional. It sounds like she was very hands off, as though she had this concept but lacked execution, and then relied on inexperienced young marketing people to pick up the slack. And she somehow put her name on it and acted like she was doing all of these things. And then when it failed because of her own lack of management and her own lack of vision and her own lack of involvement and the way that her brother led the company and mistreated the employees allegedly, when the website wasn't getting the reception she wanted, instead of actually looking at what she was offering, this is how she framed it to Time. I wanted in that same interview they quoted in that article with Daily Mail. So they said, "Did you anticipate the initially negative reception to Preserve?" And she said, "I see what happens in the world of female entrepreneurs, and I see what the media does, and that they pit women against each other. And there's an or should women stick to this or this?" I knew we'd probably get grilled or celebrated for being someone they're not already picking on. It felt like a new kid coming to school. I'll get picked on or liked for being from a different place. And I've been to 16 schools in my life, so I've experienced that bullying. There is constructive criticism they've taken to heart, and then there's people being mean for the sake of being mean, or when you're trying to be light and people take you literally. It's a nasty world. See, there's her trying to say that people don't understand her jokes. You don't see male entrepreneurs pitted against each other, destroyed, picked apart, and every word they say served up to judge. That's disappointing. But we've got so much going on that we can't pay attention. The things that keep me up are things I look at on the site and I know could be better. I knew this was supposed to be better. Time and money, time and money. What I wanted preserved to be at launch was not what it was at all. It's just impossible. We found ourselves at launch and we had a Vogue cover set up. So I couldn't call Anna Winter and say, I need 6 more months. People hacked into our site a week and a half before it was meant to launch. So the site leaked. The site's not close to what I want it to be. I hope by the time it's what I want it to be, my standards will be raised infinitely more. I don't understand anything she said. But instead of actually taking the criticism, she accused the media of picking her apart because she was new in the world of lifestyle blogging. And it was because she was a woman. I don't know that it was because she was a woman. It was because the website was awful. It's like her go-to. If something doesn't work out, it's because she's a woman. If she gets criticism, it's because of sexism. If it's that a business fails, it's because of sexism. It's because the industry didn't want to value her as an entrepreneur. And that whole concept is just hogwash. There's a lot of celebrities that launch brands that get criticized, and then there's others that launch brands that do very well, and their brands do very well, and those celebrities are actually far more involved in it than Blake was. Blake just took a half-ass, lazy approach, it sounds like, to being a business authorship and then asked everyone else to do it for her. And then when it fell apart because of her own mismanagement and her brother's mismanagement, and employees are suing her for a toxic work environment or threatening to sue, then she still blames sexism. It sounds like a cop out. It's a way for her to deflect because she doesn't want to take responsibility. So when you think of it in that context, it is ironic that she would, sue Wayfair and Justin for a toxic work environment because it doesn't sound like this environment was toxic. It doesn't sound like anyone else had complaints but her. And it sounds like what she is and who she is so out of touch with reality. I've said it before and I'll say it again. She grew up, her parents were acting coaches, and her dad was a sometimes guy that showed up in television episodes, and her sister was on a very short-lived series on the CW, and her brother tried acting, and they tried to all get into acting, and she's the one that kind of took off because of Gossip Girl, and she was sort of pushed into it by her family because of their ties to acting and the acting world, but none of them were I mean, she's obviously been the most successful in the family, but she grew up and her parents put her and had her cast in different shows, and she got acting gigs because of her parents. She was in the industry because of her family and because of the family name, and she never really had to work to get a role because of that. She got opportunities because her sister was an actress and her mom was an acting coach and her dad did acting as well and taught acting classes. So she's a nepo baby. She's used to having things handed to her and not having to learn to do things on her own, and never went to college, went into a field because that's what her parents wanted her to do, and she thought she was going to start this, and she did nothing. So the failure here isn't because of sexism. It's because of Blake and Blake alone, thinking that if she can just stick her name on something, it'll be fine and everything will be great, right? As you heard in her interview. So using sexism or, discrimination is what she's saying to Time. She's being discriminated against because she's a female entrepreneur. I am a female small business owner, and I have never said those words in my life. It's not always about sexism. But I wanted to touch on something that a lot of people are missing in all of this coverage because there's been a litany of output that has gone on in the last few days of just all of these filings and filings and filings. But when something fails or she wants something, she blames other people, she deflects, and she doesn't want to take responsibility, right? And she uses her gender as either a tool or a crutch, right? And I hate to say it's the weaponization of feminism, but that's what she does. And for months, we have been hearing from Blake's team that this argument over a film and who made the film and the argument over, her possibly extorting Justin Baldoni, and that has nothing to do with the sexual harassment. It's irrelevant because even if those things happened, she still could have been sexually harassed. Yes, that is true. That is true. But we know that her ideas of what sexual harassment are don't pass the sniff test, right? We know it's just not a possibility. And if the film had nothing to do whatsoever with her claims, why then is she seeking this information from Justin in discovery? All documents and communications concerning obtaining the right to adapt the novel, it ends with us and it starts with us from January 1st, 2019 to present. If she's not at all whatsoever fighting about a movie, and if she doesn't care about a movie and he's using the movie as a smokescreen, why does she want to know about how he obtained the rights to the movie and the sequel that hasn't been made? Why would she care? It's interesting that she's asking for all documents and communications for intellectual property for a film that she doesn't own. But on the flip side, when they ask for information about Nice Pool, Marvel's like, it's we can't give you that. It's intellectual property. It's private, it's protected. He objected to it and he said he was willing to meet and confer. And he said, responding party objects to this request to the extent it seeks disclosure of information or documents concerning the responding party's trade secrets or other confidential or proprietary business information, or the confidential or proprietary business information of third parties, which responding party is obligated to protect. So if his lawsuit is meaningless and that she didn't extort him, and according to her, and it's all a smokescreen that he's using fantastical claims, she said, why does she care about who has the rights and how he obtained the rights? Why does she care what the rights are and what the stipulations of those rights are to the film he owns? It has apparently nothing to do with her claims, she said over and over and over again. And if she truly believes that his lawsuit is frivolous, why is she seeking evidence for her defense? Because it has nothing to do with her claims. It has nothing to do with her claims of sexual harassment in a toxic work environment. She's claiming that she's not seeking anything in regards to film. She is doing this to stand up for the voiceless, for the victims, be a voice for those that have been, silenced in fear because it's fear by design. Then why does she care about the rights of the movie? She shouldn't, but she does because that's what this entire fight is about. And Baldoni knows it. He knows that they have fabricated these false allegations against him because his studio is a direct competitor to Maximum Effort, Ryan's production company. He has the rights to It Starts With Us. He has the full rights in that it's not an option, it's not for sale. He can make the film and he already has a determined arrangement that if he makes the sequel, it will be distributed by Sony. There's no clause that if he sexually harasses someone, that the rights are void. It's already sold. It's done. It's a clear-cut contract. There's no option for renewal. He owns it. The only way she could get this information is through a lawsuit and abuse of discovery. And the only way she could force a sale is to tarnish his reputation with false allegations. It's not about if he's accused of sexual harassment, he'll lose the rights. He doesn't lose the rights. But if he's accused of sexual harassment and she can tarnish his reputation, his stock in the industry goes down. And does anyone really want to watch a sexual harasser in the next sequel? Well, Blake could certainly come in and save the day with her production company and make it because that's what this is all about. And they exposed themselves. And much like what she did with Preserve, where she mistreated staff, where staff were left out in the cold, where they're allegedly is a sexually inappropriate relationship. Can we talk about that for a second? 3 former employees of Preserve told the Daily Mail that Eric Lively was allegedly having a sexual relationship with one of the employees of Preserve, and they were very uncomfortable with it because at the time he was married and their boss. In the state of New York, if an employer engages in sexual conduct with an employee, including a supervisor subordinate relationship, they can be subject to legal repercussions if it involves sexual harassment or creates a hostile work environment, even if at the time the relationship started out consensual. They're not automatically illegal, but they can become problematic if they lead to unwanted advances or they create an intimidating or hostile environment. And when it involves unequal power dynamics, it can become quid pro quo. So they're using their position of power to get what they want, and they get this person to have sex with them because of who they are. It can create a hostile work environment because, in this case, other people that are in the office are having to be exposed to it. Not necessarily the contact, but the relationship that's inappropriate. And when they brought their concerns to Blake about it, she dismissed them, which is kind of the opposite of being a voice for women. It also sounds like these employees had to deal with drugs in the workplace. If what they're saying is true and he was using drugs like marijuana or pills in the workplace, at the time in 2015, it was not legal in the state of New York to use any kind of greenery in any capacity. So you are exposing your employees to an illegal substance and exposing them to the smoking of an illegal substance on the job, which is again a hostile work environment, a dangerous work environment. Some people are allergic to smoke, some people are allergic to marijuana, believe it or not. If they don't have proper furniture, again, an unsafe work environment. Being left out in the cold, unsafe work environment. Working conditions are so poor and they're working 20 hours a day because he's so erratic. And then they also have to deal with his spiraling up and down behavior. Again, a hostile work environment. So she, instead of, the employees suing her, they somehow come to terms. I don't know how. And 3 of them file legal claims. And I bet you if any one of those 3 came up and the one that got 300,000, I would bet the one that got 300,000 was the one that Eric was involved in, because you can shut someone up real good with money. That's my opinion. So did Blake then help her brother cover up what happened at Preserve with the drugs and the sexual harassment? Because it kind of sounds like that's what happened. And now she's coming forward, which is why they're saying to her, like, it's pretty hypocritical for you to do this to him when you did this to us. It's projection. So she's blaming sexism for why this happened, but she covered up what her brother did and she covered up her own misbehavior and she silenced the women involved in this, right? With this lawsuit against Baldoni, she's covering up her own bad behavior using sexual harassment as a weapon so that she and her husband can sue him under a frivolous lawsuit so they can obtain the rights to a film sequel that they want. It's intellectual theft in many ways, which is why they're suing Blake and Ryan for extortion. And the extortion continues to keep going with every single filing. It's like Richard, the photographer that went through all of that stuff with them, said, the leopard never changes his spot. He's a creature of habit. All of their cons are the same. All of their failures are repeated. All of their mistreatment of people are repeated. Everything they do to people is projected onto their targets. And that's what they're doing to Baldoni. And I'm glad that these staff have spoken out. I think, they should see about getting these NDAs slashed, because you cannot use a non-disclosure agreement to, hide criminal activity or workplace illegal acts that happen in the workplace or workplace grievances. You can't hide behind an NDA to cover it up. That's not legal. That's not what NDAs are for. So tell me what your thoughts are about this in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.